now that we have these tests basically set up, we have the before method set up, what we want to do here is actually complete the rest of our deployment migration tests. So effectively, we're checking if this name of tether is successful. We're checking if the reward token is successful. Let's go ahead and check that also the transferring to our decentral bank that we just, because you know how we transfer all of our tokens of our reward tokens to the central bank, that is successful, and the transferring of 100 mock tether tokens to our investor is also successful. Okay, so let's add these tests as well to our testing of the central bank over here. So what we can do is already we can leverage this template that we're building. You see we have tether rewards, so we can add as well the central bank here. And right under here, this is essentially where we're loading our contracts, right? So we can even comment here, load contracts, right? Because this is where we are getting our tether contract and our reward contract. And by putting it before, we know that this runs first and foremost, and it's the most important. So we can also fetch our decentral bank, and let's get that as well. So let's do decentral bank is going to equal await. But what we want to actually check for inside of our decentral bank specifically is going to be the addresses of reward and tether, because remember, we are actually getting in our deployment the addresses over here for the reward address and the tether address. So we want to check to see that that's coming through in our test as well. So we're going to go in here and we can type in rwd.address, and tether.address. Okay, so now we're loading our 3 contracts with the addresses of the reward and tether address to our decentral bank. Next item on the agenda here is going to be to check to see that we transfer all of our reward tokens to the decentral bank, right? Just like how we do it in our deploy contract up here. And the code is actually quite similar to how we'd want to how we're writing it in our await, how we're writing it in our deployment JavaScript, right? So we're going to await, and what are we going to be awaiting? Well, it's the transfer, right? We're awaiting the transfer. So we're running transfer again, because if you remember in our reward token, we have a transfer function. So we can leverage this transfer function, which takes an address to and a value. And that's what we're doing exactly. It's the same thing that we're doing in our test, because we're testing to see that it works first. So we're going to go reward.transfer like this. The address, which is we want it to transfer to the decentral bank.address, and the value. And we want the value to be 1 million. And we remember with this whole way conversion thing, it's a lot of zeros. So we can actually write the conversion right here by bringing in, if you remember, our Web3 utilities. So we could say web3.utils. We want to transfer two-way, right? Because it's in Ethereum. So we're going to say two-way, and then we put in the amount. So now that we're transferring it two-way, we can actually put in the amount in Ethereum. So we could just write 1 million. Now, oops, and I need to close this. Now, this works. Now this would work and everything. It'd be great. But as Greg also mentions in his video when he goes through this, it's important to note, it's important as developers that we're not reiterating and rewriting the same code over and over and over again. So essentially, this formatting, this balance reformatting, which suits our interests much better, is something that we may be using often. And instead of rewriting it over and over again, why not just turn it into a helper function to make our code much more robust, right? So to do that, it's quite simple. It's very simple to do. So why not just do it? All we really have to do is just write a function, and we can call this function tokens, and tokens can take the argument of an integer, so a number, all right? And what's this going to return? What is tokens going to return? Well, tokens is going to return essentially this, right? So we can return this, but instead of an actual string, we can use our argument. So it will be number. And we want this number to be ether. So we do this like that. We add our argument for it to be ether as the second argument over here, second parameter. And then now, instead of putting all of this, we can just call our function tokens. And now we can just put in the number, right? And in this case, instead of writing, I don't know, 18 decimals for a million, we can actually just write a million. So that's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million. Okay, awesome. Okay, awesome. And so finally, the last thing we want to check for our deployments here, like for our deployment testing, is the transferring of 100 tokens to our investor, right? Like we did over here. And if we see over here, basically, we transfer 100 Tether, mock Tether tokens to account number 1, and we put in the amount over here, right? And so it's pretty much the exact same thing that we want to do for this, except for we need to also specify in this case where it's coming from. And we do that essentially like this. So first off, let's comment transfer 100 mock 100 mock tethers to what's his face, to the investor or to the customer or whatever. Okay. And we can say await. We're going to go tether.transfer, and we are transferring where, right? Because when we check the transfer, the first thing has to be the address, right? Same thing as last time. But in this case, we're not transferring to the central bank. So we can actually put in the accounts that we have up here, all right? And we specify which account. We want it to be the first account. Remember, the first account is going to be the second account over here. Sorry, not the first account, the second account, which is the second in the array, and we do that by typing in 1. Okay, and then after that, we put our amount, so we can just type in tokens, and this time we put in 100, and then our final argument is going to be from where it's coming. And we do this actually by writing from, so where it's coming from. So we create an object here, and we say it's from where, and we want it to come from the accounts. Which account do we want it to come from? Well, from the owner account, so that would be which one? 0, right? And so if you remember, if we go back to our Tether contract over here and we check transfer, we see that we have an address, we have the address which is 2, and the value. So we have the address here, we have the value, and then we grab it from our contract here, from our accounts, from the 0 account. So how can we make this code even better, right? So this should work, right? The logic's fine, everything's perfect, it's a little bit refactored, it looks nice, easy to read and follow. But what could we do to actually take this one step even further? Well, what we could do is we could actually go into the arrays themselves, and we can do that by selecting the arrays like this, and then naming each array so we get access to each array. So I can go the owner, which is the first account, and the customer, which could be the second account, right? So instead of constantly having to do account 0, account 1, blah, blah, now we have a better name method. We have a better name set up here. So I can actually rewire this now by taking owner and replacing the account 01 with just owner, and customer from account 0, like that. And that just reads a whole lot better, doesn't it? All right, so let's just run this test and see if we're good right now. So I'm going to go to the terminal and type in truffle test. Okay, so our before hook looks like we're getting an error with our before hook. Let's take a quick look. And okay, so I see that I actually want to be transferring from the decentral bank. This decentral bank, because this is what's awaiting for these addresses. So that's where there's a mistake over here. And let's save and run the truffle test again. All right, so we fixed that typo. And await tether.transfer owner from customer. Oh, wait, this is reverted, right? We want to transfer 100 mock tokens to the customer. So I did this backwards in my brain for some reason, but essentially right now we're transferring to the owner 100 tokens from the customer, which really isn't fair because it's supposed to be the because the customer is supposed to be receiving, or the investor is supposed to be receiving the 100 mock tokens. So it should be customer and this should be owner. So let's save that and try again. Let's go back to terminal. Back to the terminal here, and all right, amazing. So we are passing. Excellent, excellent, excellent.